Hey everybody, what is going on? It's your man Nathan, and we are diving into week 2 of Belief a Two-Way Street training. Belief a Two-Way Street training. And so before we dive in for this week, I want to kind of recap a little bit about what we talked about last week. And the exercise we went through last week was called Who Am I? Who am I? And we asked 9 questions about who you believe that you are. And they ranged everything from like what you enjoyed doing as a little kid that maybe you've stepped away from as an adult to the very last question that we ask that is a major part of what we've got going on this week is the question of, are there areas in your life that do not serve you? Are there areas in your life that do not serve you? So that was the last question we ended on last week. And that's where I want to begin this week. Because as you can see, the title slide here says, Belief a Two-Way Street, 9 questions that reframe things that don't serve you. So that is the whole purpose of this week's training. If you are just joining for the first time in the training, my goal is to go for an hour to an hour and a half to get through all 9 questions. And then if there are questions that come up as you hear me speaking and talking about a specific question, make sure and type them out in the comments, and I'll get to them when I see something come through. But feel free to type anything out, and we'll go from there. But it's going to be about an hour and a half, an hour to an hour and a half to complete what we're talking about today. So, yeah, it's all about what isn't serving you today. And if you are on live, let me know that you got on and that you can hear. I would love to know that. So drop me some emojis or hearts or thumbs up. That way I know. It looks like Josh just jumped on, and it looks like Amber may be on. So thanks for joining, guys. All right, Josh, we'll see you when you get back, my man. But we're gonna go ahead and dive right in. And so where we left off, I kind of covered that a minute ago. We left off with the question of what isn't serving you? What isn't serving you? And that's the question. As you watch this, I want that to be the question that you think about, that is like the umbrella for all the 9 questions that we talk about today. So it can be lots of different things that aren't serving you, but that's the great thing about life. And life is like a story, it's like a movie, and you're the author or the main character of your story. And there's lots of times that you go back and you make edits, you go back and you reshoot scenes, and you figure out what happens when either characters, situations, plot points, or environments don't fit the story that you are trying to create. And that's the whole thing around reframing, is you get to decide out of all of those things, if something's not fitting, how do I start to reframe that, and how do I look at it from a different perspective. So that's really what we're going to try and accomplish here today. And I want to tell you a personal story about how I use this in my life. So, for those of you who may not know, I wrote this book almost 2 years ago. And when I was walking through this chapter, one thing that was really prevalent in my life was drinking. Like any type of event that I went to with my friends, it involved drinking. And so that was something that at this point, as I was writing it, I knew that was something that I needed to reframe in my life. And I knew that in order to do that, I had to start to ask myself different questions and change how I looked at things. Like, you can have fun without alcohol. That was a major point that I came to the conclusion, like, I can be myself without alcohol. And so that was a major point that I got to reframe, look at, and say, hey, this is something that in my life, it's not serving me. So when you think about that from your own story in your own life, is there one major thing that sticks out and that doesn't serve you or is not serving you currently? Because you know that it's not, but oftentimes we know a lot of things about a lot of things and we choose to overlook it because it gets uncomfortable and because change is difficult, because we only can see what we will lose by making the change, and we can never see what happens that could be the greatest possibility and the greatest thing to propel you forward, because again, the brain can only reflect on what it knows you will already lose. So just again, is there something in your life that, for me, it was the drinking that really got me to start to ask questions about reframing? But is there something, whether it's a relationship, whether it's an environment, or whether it's a behavior, is there something that shows up like that for you? Okay, let's see. Josh has a comment here. Don't know how to explain it, but I'm learning to be a team leader and taking responsibility. I feel like part of that is dropping my ego. And so with your ego, is it dropping the ego for the sake of the way you define what it looks like to be a leader? Is that what's coming up for you? Or how do you get to reframe that? And maybe some of the questions that are coming up will actually help provide some clarity as we go on. But just think about that and let me know as we continue on, because that's I understand that for sure. And when I read that, the definition of leader and the label and how we define that is what came up for me. And it can be something that's very difficult when you're a younger leader, for sure. All right, so all right, so I covered this earlier. It's what do we want to reframe? And I looked at it in three ways. Is it a relationship? Is it an environment? Is it a behavior? I think those are three key things that whenever we're talking about reframing anything, those were the three that came to my mind. I'd be curious to know if something else when you think about reframing for yourself, if there's anything else besides a relationship, an environment, or a behavior that comes up for you. I know there have been a couple of people watching, and let me look at what Josh put here. Trying to step into a job, and I'm having to compete with a couple other people. Okay, yeah, that competition and that comparison can be a a real big barrier lots of times that for for me it would create a lot of analysis paralysis and get in the way of taking action. So I think that some of these questions are definitely going to help provide a different perspective and support you in kind of how you can show up and be the leader that you want to be in that situation. And if you're watching this on replay, give me a hashtag replay so that I know you're watching on replay. And I'd love to hear what comes up for you as we continue on. All right, so like we defined belief last week, and so I want to talk about how I defined reframing before we step into the questions. So when we talked about belief last week, you guys know I said it's the acceptance of a statement as true. So when we're reframing, what we're doing is we're questioning the statements that you accept as true and refocusing in a new way so that you are able to head in a new direction. So if, like Josh, one of the things is leadership, then it's starting to figure out, okay, what do I accept as true as a leader? And is there another way to look at that so that I'm not so caught up in the competing with the other people and the comparing myself to the other people competing for that position. So again, reframing is defined as questioning the statements you accept as true and refocusing in a new way to head a new direction. Because when we reframe, we are resetting our compass and we are resetting some things that we accepted as a belief before we started this questioning process. So I'd be curious after seeing that, what you guys, how you define reframing and how you've used it in your life up until this point. I'd be curious to know about that. All right, so as you guys think about that, I got the question, are you guys ready? Are you ready for the 9 questions that I've got? You've never used it, but you want to now. All right, awesome. Always being open is a good thing. So the 2 questions I've got for you, and I want some audience participation here. Like, are you ready to stay in the matrix? And when I talk about the matrix, the belief that things can only be one way and accept what everybody else tells you, or are you ready to get rolling in questioning and reframing so that you can become the best version of yourself and the version of yourself that you're defining and not being defined by the people, the circumstances, the environment or the current behaviors that you are accustomed to. So if you're ready, give me a thumbs up or give me a heart so I know that you're ready, and then we will dive into the 9 questions for today. All right, I see some hearts coming through. I appreciate your engagement for sure. Let me go ahead and take this banner off for us here. This one, there we go. And then I'll throw this one up just as a reminder about what we're talking about today. All right, so let's get ready and let's dive into question 1, I think. We'll see. Last time I did this last week, I was wrong. I forgot. Oh, no. See, every time I say that, I should just know that there's a slide in between. But as we get ready to dive into these questions, here is a reminder for you. You are a creator, the creator of your story. You are the main character and you are the author. And we are all part of your story as well. So I am a assisting or a supporting character within your story at this moment. And so everybody in your life currently is a supporting character in your story. So keep that in mind, because there may be a time when the characters change, the plot changes, and you have control over who you choose to write in and who you choose to edit out of your story. Let me get back here so I can see the comments. And then here we go. Question 1. All right. So, what's putting pressure on you in other areas of your life that's making it difficult to believe in your goals? I think that this is super important when we're talking about reframing and going back to that main question of what isn't serving you. So think in the frame of mind of what isn't serving you. So for me personally, right now, one thing that definitely is not serving me is the sleep schedule that I have. That is something that I need to reframe, and I need to edit how that shows up in my life. But I know that it's definitely not serving me, and it's not helping me show up as my best version of myself. Okay, yeah. So that's really what's getting hammered home now, is the comparison game, and how many people can relate to comparison being something that puts immense pressure on yourself when it comes to achieving your goals. Whether because I know it's Josh that's talking here, I know like Josh wants to be an author. And sometimes when we want to be an author, there's so many other authors out there in the world. It's very easy to see where somebody already has been and forget that they started exactly where we are at one point in their journey. And still, the fact that even if we start from the same point, our journeys are all going to be different, because we have different skills, we have different environments, factors that happen from point zero, just based on who we are and our gifts and talents. Like we talked about last week, the 5 strengths and the 5 weaknesses, just those alone are going to create differences in how we show up in the world. But I can absolutely agree that comparison is something that creates major pressure and it can stop you from pursuing a dream, believing in a dream, and believing that you are made for something bigger. But my friend, I can guarantee you that you are made for something bigger, and you are on a trajectory to get to something bigger. You just get to continue to find the people that you want in your life to have in your circle, and you get to edit the characters. And then as you begin to do that, you get to edit the behaviors that you don't want in your life. And because we've had that conversation before, I know that this is something that you are working really hard on creating. So I want to commend you for that. All right. Question 2. All right, let me see. I know there's a little delay, so I'll see when it changes on the screen here. All right, so question 2. What will my life look like 10 years down the road if I continue without reframing the negative aspects of my story? What will it look like if you know there are things that aren't serving you that you continue to pay the price for 10 years down the road? What will that create for your life? And you are paying a price every moment of every day with everything that you do. So even in the things that are, quote, negative in your life, there's been an accepted price that you've been willing to pay in the moment for that to continue. And it could be something whereas if judgment comes up, you're paying the price for not using your voice because of the fear of rejection. So you know that if you don't speak up, you will remain comfortable in the space that you are, and you will eliminate rejection. So we're paying prices for quote good behaviors, or the behaviors that we strive for, and we're paying the price for anything that's a negative uh, in our life. We have figured out that we are willing to pay that price for some reason, and I believe it's different for all of us depending on what that circumstance or what that behavior or the environment is. So if you can think of anything, and I know Josh just wrote something, but if you can think of anything that you are paying a price for, the question is the price you're paying, is it worth it in the long run? And what happens if you continue to do it and do it and do it and do it for 10 years and you never make the change that you know deep down inside you want to make, but you're still not wanting to pay the price of the discomfort that comes along with that change? So for any of this stuff, I would recommend having a pen and paper because this is a lot of reflection questions, and it's going to take some time to answer all these questions for sure. I will create bad relationships along the way and not being grateful for what I do have if I continue. Okay. Okay. So if that's the case, then I would ask, and some of this will come later on, but since we're in the moment, I would ask you, what is one thing that needs to change so that the price you are paying shows up differently, so that you can be in practice of that gratefulness for what you do have, and so that you can form the relationships that you deserve and not ones that are bad. So I'd be curious to hear what comes up for you when I ask that. And then we will, as you think about that, I'll go on to question number 3. All right, and I kind of asked this to you directly, Josh, but question number 3, what are compelling reasons for you to change? And why must you change? It's so important to know why you want to do this. Why is it important to you? Because if it's not important to you and it's not a priority to you, no matter what it is, and no matter who's watching this, if it's not important to you, if it's not a priority to you, guess what? You are not going to reframe anything, and you are going to continue to pay whatever price you're paying for what you're getting in life. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. All of this is a personal choice. Everything that we are talking about today and that we talked about last week, it all comes down to personal choices, and things happen when they're supposed to happen. Things happen when you are ready for them to happen. So if you're not feeling it right now, that's perfectly fine. But I do know that when it is your time to do this, you have to have a compelling why to why you want to change and why it must be done. So, going back to the original question, that thing that's not serving you, you must have a compelling reason to change, and you must understand why that is so compelling to you. All right, let's see. What did Josh say here? Not seeing others as competition and working with others. Same people you see on the way up are the same people you see on the way down. So I'm going to assume that means like the people that you surround yourself with, you're going to see them during the good times, the bad times. So it's important that those people are people you want to see and people you want to support, no matter where you are on that spectrum of, like you stated, the up and the down. So yeah, I would agree with that. So one of the great things that I've noticed as I've started this journey in entrepreneurship and in coaching is all the people that we look up to, all the people that are, quote, bigger people or have more social recognition. I think that's the best way to put it. They have more social recognition because they're not more valuable than you or I. They're just people like you and I. But they are so good at focusing on collaboration rather than competition. They know that if one of them is winning, they're all winning and they're all supporting each other, and they really don't focus on competing. They figure out the ways that they can serve and work with one another to uplift everyone. I think that's been one of the things that will stick with me forever. The people that we see have more social recognition, I believe that they got there because they were really focused on what they can bring to the world, and they're really good at figuring out how to collaborate with other people. So during the bad times, they can help you. Um, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Josh, thanks for joining, man. Good to see you. we are talking question 3 out of 9 for reframing, and we're focused on the thing in life that isn't serving you, thing or things, and all of the questions are framed around that thing. So let's go on to question number 4. All right. So when I think about reframing and rewriting, I think we have to think about, or you have to think about, how is reframing impacting your family? How is it impacting others around you? And most importantly, how is not reframing impacting you specifically? Because how you show up will impact those other 2 groups of people. So, how is that impacting how you show up in the world for those other people, whether they're people you know or just people that are in your world, which, if you haven't heard me say it before, it's the 360 degrees around you. Instead of thinking about the whole world, think about the world as being the 360 degrees around you. So, how is not reframing the thing that is not serving you currently impacting your family? How is it impacting others? And again, most importantly, how is it impacting you yourself? I think those are really important people to think about when we think about what is not serving us. Because if it's not serving us, it's not just impacting solely us, it's impacting all the people around us. And oftentimes we forget that. We just get focused on how it's impacting us, but we forget that it's like a ripple in a pond and it's impacting a lot of other people around us. Okay, yeah. So if you're able to reframe, then I'm assuming, Josh, that that would create being a positive coworkers for others in the workplace. So that's what happens when you start to reframe. So what happens when you get stuck in the competition mode or the comparison mode? How does that impact you and the other people around you? I'd be curious for your like immediate thoughts about that. And man, I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling much more comfortable this time around using this platform than I was last week for sure. And thanks for everybody who's hopped on, hopped off, and definitely Josh, thanks for the engagement, man. Because nobody likes to sit and talk to themselves, I don't think. So I appreciate that for sure. So as you start to type that out and everything, I will move on to question 5. All right. So up until this point, we've talked about all the things not really serving. Yeah. Resentful and bitter. Absolutely. I could see where that can show up when we get in comparison and when we get into um like the competition aspect of things, because it's just, we can say things like, why not me? When's it going to be my turn? That'd be, what kind of statements do you say to yourself when you get in that mode of being resentful or being bitter? I think that shows up for a lot of us in different areas of our life. and they can show up in things like relationships. Well, mainly relationships, but they can be in all aspects of our life where they talk about, like I said, why not me? Or when's it going to be my turn? I would love to hear what kind of thought comes up for you when you think about that. But we focused on a lot of the things that don't serve us up until this point. And here's one of the questions where we start to reframe and we look at the situation a little bit differently. But I think it's so important, like you're saying, Nathan, and this has been about reframing, but we've talked about all the quote negative things up until this point. I think it's important to do the questions previous because they allow us to gain an awareness of where we currently are. And the only way we can reframe anything is to understand where we are and why we don't want to be there, or why we want to be there, and the behaviors we must continue to have in order to be there. Let's see. My supervisors are leaning towards the guy I was competing with and told me straight up, but it's not official yet. Well, I would say in that aspect of things, one of my mentors, he says all the time, what happened, happened, and it couldn't happen any other way. Like, what happened, happened, and if that person ends up getting the job, that just means that it wasn't the job for you. It has nothing to do with you as a person. It is just not meant to be for you in this moment in time. And so know that it has nothing to do with your personal value as a person. You matter. You bring tons of value into the world. So don't let that get you caught up, if that is to happen. But as I was saying, we focused on gaining the awareness of where you are right now with the previous questions. And so this one is in a different frame because now it's starting to see, okay, if I start to reframe this, the thing that's not serving me, how will I show up differently? So I see you as a person of initiative and ability. What would happen when you start to see yourself in the same light? What would happen when you start to see yourself in the same light? And if you do already, that's great. But it's a good reminder of, in the times when you don't see yourself in that way, when you don't have that lens of how you're showing up in the world, being able to answer this question will be a reminder for you of how you show up and what happens when you remind yourself that you are a person of initiative and ability, because each and every one of you are people of initiative and ability. And I think one of the great things about initiative is it goes back to that priority. What are you prioritizing in your life? When we lack initiative, I think that it's just a signal of maybe the thing that we're attempting isn't really for us. It's something that maybe from the outside world, the social perspective, it's got a label that has a status or has a definition that we believe we want, but deep down inside, we know that that's not true for us. It's not true to who you truly want to be. So Who is that person? And what happens when you see yourself that way? How do you show up? What do you do differently? Because when you are somebody that's full of initiative and ability, you show up differently than when you may be stuck in that comparison, that competition. When you say, it doesn't matter who I'm competing with, but I know the value I bring, and I know that personally, the only thing I can control is how I show up in the world and what I do. I can't control any of the other stuff. Then you have an opportunity to show up differently. All right, so we're going to move on to question number 6. All right. You know what's funny? I talked about how I wrote this almost 2 years ago. I would actually change this probably to question 5 so that the questions were in order of how we so we stay on that reframing aspect of things. But what do you want to admit to yourself, and why are you making this choice? And when I think of this question, here's what I'm thinking of. What do you want to admit to yourself about how you are showing up? How you're showing up and the prices that you're paying that aren't serving you. That's the frame of reference I want you to think about when you think about this question. Why are you making the choices that you're making? And know that whatever shows up for you, it doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that it is what it is, and that's what shows up for you right now. And that's why we're doing this, because we're reframing and we're restructuring that thought process for you. So what's that thing that's holding you back, and what must you admit to yourself about that price that you're paying so that you understand why you are making the choice that you're making? Yeah, show up in a positive way. There are lots of leadership opportunities elsewhere and another time. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Take what you've learned in this current circumstance about yourself, and even question about how the individuals that were also vying for that position, how did they show up, and what could you learn from them as well as learn from yourself in that particular circumstance? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, why are you making the choices that you're making? For question 6, I think that's the main point I want to drive home for that question. Why are you making the choices that you're making? And like I said earlier, you definitely want to take some time. This isn't going to happen over this training at all. This is going to take some time for you to sit down with the questions uh, and really reflect on what shows up for you over time. I'm sure when you guys did it last week that you took some time to ask yourself some of the questions from last week. So just take the time you need to answer these until you're complete with your answer. And I'd love to hear what comes up for you. I gotcha. I gotcha, man. Yeah, and sometimes that really happens. Um, I honestly can think of my brother in that situation about when he went to college. He didn't really. I don't think he wanted to go to college, but there was an expectation that he felt to go, and he decided to go. and he ended up not graduating. So I think expectations like that are real in life. Um, and I would look at the way you use like late in the game and just maybe you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. Because if you weren't there right now, you wouldn't be having the realizations that you're having about the opportunity, um, and the fact that you want to step up. So, just a reframe right there about that. That would be my advice there. All right. Question 7. And again, these are the 9 questions to reframing, and you can rewatch this at any time in the group. So, okay. I want you to, when you do this question, I want you to sit, I want you to think, and I want you to do exactly what it says. I want you to imagine. You are someone that is 100% confident that you can make your dream a reality. You are somebody that's 100% confident that you can make your dream a reality. Now, when you get into that space, how will that change how you approach your daily routine? Hey, Tessa, thanks for hopping on. See, I don't know. I think there's so much of a delay that you guys get on, and by the time I see it, you guys have already gotten off, but it's cool. Thanks for anybody who jumps on for any amount of time. But so, again, imagine that you are 100% confident that you can make your dream a reality. There is no fail. Whatever you do, you are going to succeed. How will that change your approach to taking action? What will you do differently? What are you doing right now that's working? Like, I don't think we asked that question enough either. What are you doing right now that is in alignment with the dream that you have? What's working? Do more of that. What's not working? It's time to trade that out. But when you are that person that's 100% confident in their ability to make that become real, how will that change your approach to taking action? Let's see what Josh said here. I didn't care until a leadership opportunity showed up. I need to care and build my resume up long before, so I am ready for the next opportunity. All right. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Josh. As you think about the opportunity in the future, what do you want to create in your career? That's the question I would ask you, so that when you're really clear on that, you know kind of the steps that you need to take. And if you're really clear on that, I would then go, and let's say it's in the Navy, and that's where you see the future. Then I would say, who's somebody who's currently doing what you want to be doing in the future, and how can you get them to be a part of your circle, be a part of your tribe? I think that will do wonders in helping you prepare for that next opportunity ahead. So I think that no matter what you're doing in life, and whoever is watching, I think we've all been in things where we've had opportunities and we weren't really prepared. So I don't think you're alone in that. And I think that's a very valuable realization that you're having about being ready for the next one. And I think one of the most important things to ask is, what must I do to be prepared for the next one? Yeah, so I was talking about, if you're thinking about your future and being prepared for the next opportunity, like you said, it's if it's in the Navy, finding somebody who's doing what you want to do in the future and asking yourself, how can I get them to become part of my tribe, or how can I become part of their tribe so that I can learn more about the preparation to bring that into reality. Question 8. All right. Now that you've imagined yourself as somebody who's 100% capable of making things happen, what will it look like to become that person? What will it look like to become that person? And when you think about this question, when you reflect back on it and you dive deeper into it, I want to ask you, when you think about that person, who shows up in your life? What are people saying? Like, what do you hear people saying? What do you say about yourself? Who and what do you see in your life? Use all of your senses to bring that to life. Ask yourself questions about any kind of sense. I mean, who's going to be in your life? What are they saying? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What does it smell like? What kind of food are you eating? I mean, all of the senses, the more you can get them involved, the more real that becomes. So, what will it look like to become that person that you imagine? What will that look like? And then we're just going to dive right into question 9, because I know that, like I said, these are deeper questions that take more time than being on a Facebook Live training to answer. All right. So, when you are imagining that person, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, what you hear, all of those things, you have become that person. How will that change your actions and what you do on a regular basis? How will that change your actions and what you do on a regular basis? Will it change the people that you hang out with? Will it change the books you read? Will it change the words you speak? How you use your language? Will it change, like I said, struggling with sleep? Will it change how you sleep? What will it change for you? What must change for you to become that person you just imagined? What will it take, and what is required from you to choose to change to become that person? Because at the end of the day, I've said this earlier, it's about choice, and it's about your willingness to change and have faith that the change is going to create what you want. TK, thanks for hopping on. We just got done with the last question, so definitely check out the training from the beginning to catch up on the questions. And I would love to hear your guys' feedback. Okay, you want to read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Well, you can absolutely make that happen. But again, reiterating, since TK, I know that you're on this question 9, we've talked about reframing. Like when we ended last week, the question I ended on is there something in life that's not serving you? And so we've really focused on that question, and the 9 questions are ways to think about the things that aren't serving you and reframe that so that you're eliminating the thing that's not serving you out of your life. And then this one, by the end of it, we're talking about the person that you become when you are able to be 100% confident in your abilities and what you create, how that will change your actions in your life currently, if that's the belief that you have. But yeah, if you guys have any feedback for me, I love to hear it. I want to continue to bring value to you guys. And yeah, I don't know any other way to ask questions, that's for sure. Here is the last thought that I will leave you with today. You are not in control of your circumstances, but you choose your response. You are not in control of your circumstances, but you choose your response. We all have things that happen to us. I mean, we're sitting in a perfect example right now with COVID and everybody up until this point spending a lot of time at home. We didn't choose that. Nobody chose that, but we all get to choose how we respond and how we use this time. And I think that that is something that is super important when we talk about reframing how things show up for us in our life. And with that, guys, if there's anybody who you would believe to benefit from these trainings, we got 2 more weeks of this stuff going on here every Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anybody can join from the group. I would just say, if you know anybody, invite them to the group, invite them to take part in the conversation. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I can't wait to see what you guys create from the questions. With that, I will see you guys next week.